Okay, so purpose of my short presentation is really just to give everybody a little bit of an overview and some foundational knowledge on how food products enter the European marketplace. I'm going to start you off with a couple of comments on the basic definitions. I'm going to share these slides with everybody who's interested, so I'm not going to necessarily read out or reference every word that you see, but you can follow this up later on. So as for the definition of food, I think the most relevant aspect here is that one needs to bear in mind that botanicals that are used exclusively for medicinal purposes cannot necessarily be foods. So this is a pretty common stumbling block when it comes to fitting a novel ingredient into the right regulatory category. Another thing to bear in mind about foods is health claims that can be made related to food ingredients and food products are extremely limited. Essentially, all you can really make are nutritional claims, and then there are a few exceptions and loopholes when it comes to health claims, but the European Food Safety Authority, for good reason or bad reason, has so far pretty much rejected each and every application that tried to attach a health claim to a botanical. And finally, as regards to novel foods, the EU defines a novel food or food ingredient as something that has not been in the marketplace and not been significantly consumed. And what that means, I will pick up later on, prior to May 1997. If you want to bring a novel ingredient to market, you must apply for authorization and present the necessary required evidence. Back in 2018, a modified novel food regulation came into force, which replaced the previous regulation and made some interesting and fundamental changes to the way that applications are submitted and processed. You now have two pathways at your disposal. One is a typical or classic novel food application for something that is, again, I will elaborate a little further what that means, truly novel, where you essentially submit a full safety assessment next to the specification, exposure, etc., etc. More importantly, however, there is now a pathway for traditional foods from third countries, i.e. Something that may be a food item in your home country, but not yet in the European Union, which is a simplified procedure where a lot of evidence that needs to be presented for the classic novel food is being replaced with evidence for traditional use. That brings a ton of new market opportunities, especially for traditional foods, because the procedure is comparatively straightforward. Another aspect that has changed with the new regulation is that the system has now been centralized. Back in the day, you would file an application with the national regulatory authority. Now you file an application with the EU Commission, and the Commission decides on whether EFSA needs to get involved or not. A further new item is the Union list of authorized novel foods, which is a document freely available from the EU Commission website. And almost most importantly, as opposed to under previous rule, all authorizations are now generic, which means that there is actually very little opportunity for an applicant to protect proprietary processes, manufacturing, etc. So, example, if I decide to bring oranges to market as a novel food, and I succeed with my application, everybody else who grows oranges will be able to market their oranges in Europe too. What's nice about the new regulation is that it's also become considerably faster. Supposedly, you're now needing 2 years for a full authorization and hopefully less than 1 year for a traditional food notification. Here, a quick look at the categories. So basically, what novel foods can be truly new, or they can be modified. They can consist of microorganisms, minerals, plants, animals, cell or tissue cultures, or they can be produced, manufactured in a way that alters significantly the composition or structure. What's been introduced new in the new regulation is the inclusion of nanomaterials. Foods can, or ingredients can become foods that were previously only used in food supplements. That's an important distinction. And vitamins and minerals are now also included. A quick look at the procedures. So on the left, procedure under the previous regulation. On the right, procedure under the new regulation. As I said before, traditional food, EFSA not involved unless one of the member states requests so. So basically how this works is Commission receives the application, passes it around the competent authorities of all member states. If they all nod, you're good to go. If one of them has concerns, EFSA gets involved. For a full authorization, the application is also received by the Commission, but the request is put out to EFSA to make an assessment. EFSA does that, issues an opinion. Hopefully all goes well. Commission implements an act to make the novel food ingredient allowable, and that then gets posted on the novel food list. A quick look at the full authorization procedure. What's involved? Well, it's the usual dossier style type of application, consisting of information about the applicant, consisting of information about the ingredient, specifications, manufacturing, stability, the whole kit and caboodle, evidence for safety, a proposal for conditions of use, labeling, etc., etc., etc. Then EFSA carries out the assessment, publishes the opinion, Commission implements, ingredient lands on the novel food list. Really important for the full notification procedure is the safety and exposure assessment. So that's a full ADME assessment, and EFSA has put out guidance that advises on toxicity testing. Their guidance is to apply a tiered strategy. So you do the least resistance first. If that fails, you go a little bit deeper. If that fails, you go a little bit deeper. Then additional studies may be needed. Allergenicity is a big issue. Contaminants are a big issue. But also conditions of use, i.e. Who's supposed to be eating this, how much of it, what's its role in the diet, is it nutritionally advantageous? Yeah, that's about it. So on to the traditional foods. Here, a simplified procedure is applied where the majority of weight is put on demonstrating the history of safe food use in the country of origin. So it has to have been in the marketplace for at least 25 years. must belong to the customary diet of a significant number of people. Other than that, if you have data on safety, that's always useful. The specification requirements are the same as in the full application, and so are the condition of use requirements. Here is how the procedure runs. The notification is sent to the Commission. As I said before, goes out to member states who have 4 months to issue objections or not. If no objections, then it goes right through onto the list. Otherwise, the whole dossier lands with EFSA, who then assesses the data and offers an opinion. So the Union list of novel foods, it's like a positive list for everything that's allowable, and it tells you what is allowable in what form and up to what daily dose. The list was initially published on January 1st, 2018, and has every novel or every new application outcome has since been added to it. So every time a food does not pose a risk or does not mislead the consumer or is not nutritionally disadvantageous, the list is updated. So how does one find out whether a food is actually novel or not? Now this can be tricky because significant exposure data are hard to come by. Obviously, you can check various published lists, namely the Union list itself, then a legacy catalog of what is considered novel or not, also published by the European Commission. There are a bunch of national lists. So Italy, Belgium, and the UK have created their own lists of botanicals that they deemed to be either food or medicinal. Germany, I just noticed here, has very recently, I think earlier this year, published an update of the 2014 list. Then there are a couple of organizations that have put out lists of herbal ingredients that can be considered foods. That's the Tea and Herbal Infusions Europe and the European Food Information and Resource Consortium. Above and beyond that, it is kind of up to you to research and present evidence of food use in one or many of the European member states. A couple of exceptions to the rule. The novel food regulation does not apply if your ingredient is a food additive. That could be, for instance, a sweetener. If your ingredient is a flavor, if your ingredient is an extraction solvent used in the production of food, or an excipient, if you will, and or if your ingredient is GMO. So taken together, we have an updated novel food regulation in place for the European Union, went live in 2018, has replaced the former system of national authorizations with a simpler and faster centralized procedure, offers 2 types of application, the typical one for something that is quote unquote truly novel, the traditional foods one for ingredients that have substantial use evidence in third countries. Now covers also insects, minerals, nanomaterials, cell cultures, and tissues. Mandates EFSA with a safety and exposure assessment if necessary. In the typical application, that's part of the procedure. In the traditional one, it's optional. Makes all new and old authorizations generic, provides protection for newly and proprietary manufacturing processes for up to 5 years, has established a union list that provides the specifications and conditions of use. By now, I think it's safe to say that it already has had a significant impact, how that looks in practice will be covered by the next speaker. Thank you.
Yeah, so thanks a lot, Thomas. We have questions. Jeff, you have a question?
Sure, yeah, I can ask the question in the chat. I wanted to find out more about the UK novel foods applications for the CBD products that were due at the end of March this year. I know that obviously there was also something related to the consortium where multiple companies could register under a single dossier. Could you speak a bit more about how that process went and how it was perceived?
Okay, so first of all, let's talk a little bit about Brexit and what happened in the UK after Brexit. Essentially, they've retained the same framework and procedural approach to applications. So everything that was applicable to an EU novel food applications is still applicable in the UK, except you now have to make an application to the Food Standards Agency in the UK. Everything else is pretty much the same. As for CBD specifically, I don't want to jump ahead and steal from Denzel's presentation. So maybe give it a minute and see if your question gets answered in the second presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so Denzel will speak specifically about cannabis. Thomas, so I just wanted to find out what African foods, if any, are on this list.
One good example, for instance, is baobab fruit pulp. That was actually quite a quote-unquote famous application that was successful prior to introduction of the new rule. So that was something that underwent a full notification. I think it's no secret. I've just filed a traditional novel food application for Bambara nut, but I'm sure there's many more. I just don't have the list in front of me to double check.
Okay, well, yeah, so that's interesting because we are actually working on Bambara nut starch for the pharmaceutical industry. So maybe we should have a chat. Yeah, there's a question, Prof. Nyazema.
My question was really related to the regulations. Why are they not referred to food and nutrition regulation? Because what you presented is really the interaction of the nutrients that are in the different foods. Why aren't the regulations referred to as food and nutrition regulations? Why just food, given your definition?
That is a good question, which should probably be posed to the lawmakers who wrote the regulation.
Okay.
But I appreciate your point. It is a little ambiguous.
Yes. Okay. Thanks.
All right. Thanks a lot, Thomas. If we have time, we'll come back and, because
Sure.
the two are related, right? So, Denzel, over to you.